Welcome to the Minimalist Educator Podcast, a podcast about paring down to refocus on the purpose and priorities in our roles, with co-hosts and co-authors of the Minimalist Teacher book, Tammy Musiowski-Borneman and Christine Arnold.
On this week's episode, our guest is Jill Cross. She speaks with us about curriculum development and lots of factors to consider depending on what context you are in. Jill Cross is a National Board Certified Teacher and ASCD Emerging Leader with 20 years of experience in public, charter and independent schools. Jill has conducted curriculum development in public and private schools and frequently presents across the country on teacher leadership, object-based learning, personalised professional learning and curriculum writing. Jill is a Colonial Williamsburg Master Teacher and the co-author of Living History in the Classroom, Performance and Pedagogy. Her passion is supporting teachers in planting seeds of change that have the capacity to transform education. Jill is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction at Bornblum Jewish Community School in Tennessee.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Today, we are interviewing Jill Cross, who is the Curriculum Director at a school in Memphis. Welcome to the show, Jill.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to y'all.
Thank you. How are you today, Christine?
I am very well. I'm excited to have a chat with another curriculum person and get into good discussion.
Yeah, me too. So, Jill, in your role, you've got a lot to manage, but before we get to all of that, because it's a big job, can you just give us a little bit of background of how you got into the role around curriculum?
Yeah. So I actually never thought I would be in education and ended up doing it, I thought, as a way to pay for grad school, and started part-time teaching art and discovered I kind of liked it. And so I started teaching I started teaching in a small Catholic school in Florida, and I have no education background. My degree is not in education. I had no idea what I was doing. I actually wrote at one point an apology letter on my blog to my first year students because I would all the things that we don't know when we start, right? And then I ended up going to public school, and I was there for a long time, and I was at a K-5. I was a classroom teacher, but I was serving as a magnet lead. So we had a big magnet program in the district where I worked. And I had a magnet program called academic enrichment that I just could not sell because it was like standards-based instruction, which really wasn't new and innovative in like 2007, So I heard about museum schools at a magnet meeting, and my background is in humanities and the arts. And so I immediately was like, we're doing that. And so I went to the district. I convinced them to include us in a DOE grant for that. We were awarded $1.3 million over 4 years, and I shifted into a role as curriculum specialist. So I built the program from the ground up, working on an integrated museum, I call it museum learning is sort of what I call it. And so we were partnered with 8 local cultural institutions and the University of North Florida College of Art and Design. And it was in that role that I kind of learned everything about how to work with people, with curriculum, and how to kind of manage teachers are very married to what they do. And so how to negotiate that and be a cheerleader, and kind of how to give gentle nudges when it comes to curriculum. And so after that, I ended up, that was a grant funded position. So I shifted into independent schools, and I found I really liked independent schools because we have a lot of freedom in our curriculum. And so I did this at another school, 612, and now I am here. I wanted to get back towards the South. I'm at a grade K-8 independent Jewish day school. So our challenge is that we teach 100% of what we call general studies curriculum in 2/3 of the time, because our students spend 1/3 of the day in Jewish studies. So all of the work that I did at the museum school and everywhere else on integration has become super important. And all of the curriculum work that I've done has been, distilling the curriculum down to essential has been super important in this role. So that's how I ended up here in Memphis, Tennessee.
That is quite the journey, Jill. I really like
Yes.
hearing about that. You were talking there about, teachers being married to their work. And I think, that's something we come across all the time is that it really becomes a part of our identity and how we know ourselves is as an educator. So how does that fit in with curriculum, especially when there's curriculum changes? If you're like messing with people's identity, how have you found that experience?
Yeah, so that is always a challenge, and trying to find the balance of allowing people to have their passions and to teach in the way that they feel really passionate about, because that's also important just for faculty retention, and also so to kind of take that along with like, okay, here's what our graduates need to be able to do, or here's what our fourth graders need to have mastered by the end of this year. And so that's always an interesting balancing act. For us, I think we give a lot of freedom and autonomy with our faculty. And so it's a lot of relationship building, that's a big, huge chunk of it. I'm in a small school, luckily, and so there's a lot of conversation happening, informal conversations, and I always kind of tell our teachers, like, even if you're in the faculty workroom talking to somebody about curriculum or talking to someone about redoing an assessment or watching a TED Talk to get content background knowledge, all that's PD. And we need to look at it like that. And so yeah, it's a lot of relationship building. It's a lot of finding, there's a lot of like psychology in it too. So it's like finding what it is that's going to be the thing that's going to push someone to think differently about the curriculum. One thing I also run into all the time is teachers will say, my curriculum, I have to cover this in my curriculum, right? And I hear that a lot. And to which I want to say, it's the school's curriculum, And so that, I think, really speaks to like how people, they have internalized it, so much. So yeah, it's a challenge. I enjoy it because it's like different every day.
It's just so interesting to hear, how teachers really do get attached to the curriculum, which says a lot about a teacher as a person then, right? Because that they really want to know it, they want to teach it well. Whether they know how to is another thing. So, so there's that piece to it as well. So what do you find, because you mentioned kind of some of the challenge there, what is like the hardest part of getting teachers to like step back and look at the bigger picture of it, maybe? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. And that is hard, right? Because, I think one thing I enjoyed about being a classroom teacher was I would go in my room and shut the door and I could do my thing, right? And I don't think I really understood until I moved into a curriculum role, like, oh, there's a whole ecosystem that is outside of this, right? And how everything works together. And so I think for us, we really push peer observation here. And so I really believe that visiting classrooms is like another great form of PD, right? And so the more that we can get our teachers into other spaces and other classrooms and see what's happening as far as the curriculum expectations go, or student behavior, or, like, what is this teacher doing that's really working for this or that? The better it helps us to help them see the big picture. We also kind of talk to them about, and this is something that our advancement director started doing, is talking to our teachers about how we're sort of the air traffic controllers in our school, and the teachers are kind of the pilots. And so, trying to figure out how we can help teachers to shift to sort of think in that way. That is something that we work on a lot. We also open up all of our faculty meetings in a teacher's classroom, and we ask the teacher to share something from their either a really interesting lesson or resource, or like, why is the space the way that it is? So our middle school teachers are going down to the kindergarten classroom, and they're sitting in the kindergarten chairs at the start of our faculty meetings before we move into other things. So that also has been really helpful.
Have you found that you can use the same sorts of strategies to build that trusting relationship between peers and with the teachers and yourself at all of your different locations that you've worked in? Because you've been in a similar role in different places.
Yeah, it's different everywhere that I go. So it really is different everywhere that I go. I work with a really great flexible faculty here, but the strategies, some of them are the same, kind of the gentle nudges that I still do, or being a cheerleader, making sure that, I leave little notes in boxes from time to time, like, thank you, even for simple little, you filled out a PD form. Thank you for being so conscientious to fill this out, because it helps me do my job, right? That's always a strategy that is helpful. But because, it's really just like a classroom, and every interaction I have with teachers has to be so individualized. And that goes back to that getting to know them and getting to understand like what makes them tick and what their passions are. I wish I could say there was like a really great strategy that would work across all contexts, but I don't know that I've found that yet.
Yeah, it's a work in progress for sure.
Yes.
Because you're navigating so many pieces to a big puzzle. So my question is kind of related to that. So even though you don't have like maybe the answer, but what are some structures or systems that you do have in place to be able to like effectively and efficiently visit classrooms and talk with people and things like that?
Yeah. So I've really shifted. The last time I switched roles, I got rid of all of my paper files when I moved, and it was painful. Because I had like years of paper files, but I have really found that I kind of live and breathe off my digital resources now, and my OneDrive folders, and my digital calendar, and all of those things kind of, if it's not on my calendar, like, it just doesn't really exist in my world at the moment now. And so I'm really good about calendaring. I also will, I used to use a full focus planner, and I found it wasn't great for me for note taking. But what I did take away from that was the kind of idea of the top three. So in that, you have your to-do list and picking out your top three for the day. And I find a lot of power in like writing that down and checking it off or crossing it off. And so I do that kind of every day. I revisit that and figure out what my top three are going to be for the day. The other thing I do is I kind of look at, I don't have a grand plan for how I'm observing teachers, because we're kind of small and I'm like all around all the time. But what I do is I kind of look at the day and the schedule, and I make a list just on a Post-it note of classes I plan to visit that day and the times when I know things are happening, and I stick it in my pocket. And even if I, because we do a lot of informal observations, so I'll just pop in for just a few minutes. That has helped me a ton, just, and some days I don't get to it, right? But then I have other days where I'll have a list of like 6 people I want to visit that day, and so that is super helpful. I also kind of chunk my time. So because I do work on a lot of kind of bigger initiatives and longer term projects that I obviously can't finish in a day or a week. And so I will kind of calendar and chunk my time to work on that. So if, for instance, like our capstone project, it requires some work from me. And so I make sure to kind of put that in my calendar for, even an hour. And the other thing that I find super helpful is I have really short, specific meetings with teachers with action items and a list when I go into it. And Tammy knows this from our board. Like, I like to be super efficient.
Yes.
And so I find, just having like, I will schedule 30 minutes, but a lot of times it's just like a 15-minute meeting by the end of it. Cause I know how valuable our teacher's time is. My time is valuable too. So I try to keep it short and specific. The other thing I do a lot of is I email stuff to myself. So if I have things that I need to get done, I just email it to myself because I know that I will see it, in the morning when I'm going through my emails. So that's another thing that's kind of been helpful. All of our so I oversee all of our general studies curriculum. And so all of our general studies curriculum lives in OneDrive, in folders and all of that. And I've done a lot of work to help our teachers and also help me, because we're trying to fit in 100% of the curriculum in 2/3 of the day on integrating. And so, we adopted a reading writing program. And so to help us, I rewrote and adjusted our science and social studies because it was a heavy knowledge building curriculum. I rewrote our science and social studies to match it, because it helps us get at everything. And anytime we can integrate it, it's not only good for the kids, it helps the teachers feel like they're accomplishing more. So that's a few of the things that I kind of do to keep myself moving.
Yeah, you mentioned lots of different roles and responsibilities that you have at your school. So I would love to know a little bit about, the percentage of time that you spend on different tasks. Like, are you full time in this role? And obviously, like, I do the top 3 priorities for the day as well, but my top 3 priorities were way out the window today at work. So I know that, we're talking in an ideal world here, but I'd love to hear about how you divide up your week with all of these different roles and responsibilities that you have.
Let's see. So I work on our curriculum. I work on teacher coaching. I work on our design thinking program. I teach in our design thinking program on Thursdays. And then I have leadership responsibilities, and new initiatives and partnering with the advancement director on things that are happening, or, our grandparents' day and all, so, I know a lot of people work differently when it comes to this, but I kind of do things as they come. I still have my lists, right? But if I have, I try to respond to emails kind of quickly because I will lose them, in a long list of emails later. If somebody comes to, a teacher just came to me and asked me for something and I had a minute while I was in the office, so I went and found it, right? So I try to kind of do things as they come, which helps me a lot. I guess that's the best answer to that, is that I do things as they come. I don't know that I have a grand plan for dividing my week. I kind of know what's coming long term ahead. And like I said, that putting things in the calendar and chunking time for certain days. Like, I know Thursdays is our experiential day for our students. And I know that Thursdays is I don't really have a Thursday, right? I'm going to be in that space with our middle schoolers all day on Thursday. And so I just plan my week around that. And same with our leadership meetings. Our leadership meetings are we kind of say like it's an hour, but sometimes they go much longer. And so I just sort of know middle of the day, Monday, I'm not probably going to be getting much done. So those things I can plan around and I sort of know they're coming. But for the most part, I'm taking things as they go. And working, I try not to take a whole lot home with me. I've gotten better at that now that I've been in the role. This is my 5th year, so I'm much better at kind of not doing that. And I really advocate for our teachers not to do that. But when report cards are coming out, which they just did, I had to spend all weekend editing report card comments, right? But that sort of stuff is stuff I can do at home in my pajamas while I'm watching BritBox and, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I So is one of your task list things, you mentioned having, a little list stuck in your pocket with, spots where you want to potentially stop for the day. And so like having that system of like just the informal pop-ins, how do you build the trust with your staff just so they know that like this is what we do, this is just how it's going to be. I'm just going to pop in whenever. And, like, how do you establish that culture?
Yeah. So that took a little bit of time. And I think, at the start of every single school year, we have the faculty that have been here since I've been here. They're sort of used to that happening. But we're such a small school and our leadership are always popping into classrooms. So that, that's just sort of the culture of our school. But I still have teachers who get anxious, right? And I'll get a text after I've come in and what did you think? If I haven't sent emailed the informal form to them. But at the beginning of the year, I pop in without doing kind of official note taking. And I just pop in and I send a text afterwards that's like a positive thing. And so I do that for a little while at the start of the year, just so that people don't feel like it's, it's never a gotcha, but some people still feel that way, right? So if I can make sure to point out all the positives from the start, it helps when I have to say like, have you considered this, right? The way that our informal feedback form works is it's all digital, and it has like the Danielson, a bunch of indicators that we've decided from Danielson that are important to our context, and then a box at the bottom for me to write comments and whatnot. And I always try to ask a question that is going to sort of require somebody to either respond to me or come pop by my office and talk to me. So that sort of helps me to build that relationship, and also helps me understand better what's happening. If I, didn't understand something. I also very frequently will, after an informal, kind of share a resource or a tool or an idea that might be helpful for whatever it is that they were doing. But I also go into classrooms a ton and teach. So I go in if teachers need help with, we do grade level programs. We have curriculum fair that we do at our school. I have my bunny Moffat that goes into kindergarten every week to read a story. So I'm in the classroom a lot, also just like teaching or helping. So that sort of helps, I think, as well.
It gives you such a good perspective of that whole circle of what curriculum is, right? It's not just what's written on the paper, but you're actually supporting the teachers to do it, modeling how to do it, giving them feedback on how they're doing it. It's this huge, big process and cycle. So it's really cool to hear that you're able to put all of those pieces together in your role. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, Jill, when we are saying goodbye to our guests, we always ask for a pair down pointer. So it could be building on something you've already mentioned or something completely different, just a little tip or strategy for our listeners.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this ahead of us talking and thinking about something that actually helps our students, which I thought might be helpful to people. We started and also really helps with organization, which I think is, we're always trying to figure that out, and also trying to teach and equip our students to be able to be organized. We started doing in our middle school a few years ago color coding. And so our classes are color coded. And so that means that anything that's happening, like the English folder is blue for 6, 7, and 8, right? The red folder is this subject for 6, 7, and 8. And it helps the kids organize themselves a ton. And I think and so I'm actually thinking this year we're going to start to like push it down into our lower school and start having our 4 and 5 students do it. And so when I was doing this as a teacher, I actually also use it as my organization tool because it made it super easy. If I needed, I need blue English, let me just grab the blue folder, right? And so that I think is one of those super simple things that like almost anybody can do and implement that is hugely effective in just productivity. So that would be like my teacher and student tip, I think.
I love that you're doing that as a school system because, a lot of teachers do that. I did that as well. And I think even just taking away that decision the teacher has to make on their own, where it's like, what color am I going to use this? Where you're, especially newer teachers, right? Where they might not have that system yet. But just like across the school, everybody's English is blue. Like that's just super helpful to think about that. Usually a classroom system as a school-wide system just for overall organization. I love it.
Yeah, and we found that a lot of our kids that when they go to high school, they use the same colors.
Oh yeah, no, that's
So they
great.
move on and they keep the colors. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's forever imprinted in my mind because my reading was always red. Reading red, writing blue. Yeah. Math was green. I don't know. No, science was green. That made sense. Nature.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jill. That was an awesome conversation.
Yeah, thank you. It was good for me to chat about it, and it actually kind of made me reflect on all of it. So thank you. I'm really happy to share, and I hope some of what I said was helpful to people.
Yes, for sure. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Today's episode was brought to you by Plan Z Professional Learning Services, forward-thinking educator support. Find out more at planzplservices.com.
Be sure to join Tammy and Christine and guests for more episodes of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. They would love to hear about your journey with minimalism. Connect with them at PlanZPLS on Twitter or Instagram. The music for the podcast has been written and performed by Gaia Moretti.